Hi there and welcome. This is Jennifer. Today I'm going to show you how to do foiling with various types of glue. Now I have done many videos in the past on adding foil to cards, and I'll link to a playlist here. I encourage you to check that out. But I was getting a lot of emails asking, can you just use glue for foiling? You can, but there are some sacrifices that you make, and I'll talk about that in the video today. I'll also talk about different types of glue you can use. Now please note that if you want a perfect foiled result, you really want to print an image with a laser printer and do the foiling process on that, because that bonds with the paper, it fuses with the paper. But I know a lot of people really want to find a way to stamp and then be able to foil. So I'm going to talk about using glues for that today, but be sure to check out my other videos also. There are a few ways to do this stamping and foiling technique, like with using embossing powder. You just got to find what works best for you. Okay, I'm going to be using some new colors of foil today. These are new from ThermoWeb. They're called Deco Foil. These are the newer colors that were just released. I really like this brand of foil. I think it's nice, high quality. And these are the newer colors. I'm going to be using the champagne color, the pewter color, and the lilac colors today. When I get a new foil, I like to take them out of these tubes and store them in job ticket sleeves. I find it's easier to keep all these pieces in a job ticket sleeve, easier to store that way. You can keep scraps in there, you can label it this way, so much easier to work with. Now, along with the foiling, I'm going to be using a stamp set from Mint Owl Studio today. I really like this set because it has the words thoughts and prayers along with other words that team up with it nicely. And here's the stamp set that I'll be using. I'm going to just be using the prayers today though. Okay, so I'm going to show you three different options for adding foil with glue. The first is the glue pad. Now this can be a little finicky and a little moody, so sometimes you need to make a few attempts, but I'm starting with the foiling so that if I mess up, I don't mess up my whole project. However, I was getting a pretty good track record with this technique. So here we have the glue pad. It comes with a re-inker, I guess you would call it, and you want to re-ink this pretty often so that it's good and juicy and good for stamping your glue image. So I'm kind of spreading the glue around. Now when you stamp with this, you will have a sticky image, but it's not really that sticky. I know some people stamp with this and put glitter on it, but I find that the glitter sometimes rubs off. So I haven't used this much in the past, but it works pretty good with the foiling. So I have my prayers image ready to go here. I've got a piece of Nina White 80-pound cardstock, and this is cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. We're going to ink up the prayers image with that glue pad, and I'm going to use the line on my acrylic block to line up with the line on the edge of my T-ruler to make sure I stamp this straight. Now after you do the stamping, be sure to clean your stamp off right away so that that glue doesn't dry on there. Now when I stamp this, you will not be able to see this. This is going to be a clear, very, very sticky image. Versamark doesn't work for this because Versamark isn't sticky enough, but this does have a sticky touch to it. Not super sticky, but there is a little bit of a sticky touch there that will help us with the foiling. Okay, so again, be sure to put the cap back on your ink pad and clean up your stamp. I'm now going to send this through my Minc Machine to make sure that it sticks. So I'm putting my paper in here with a piece of the champagne foil with the pretty side up into the carrier sheet. It's like a folded piece of plastic that comes with the Minc Machine. I have this in a heat setting of 3. I like the Minc Machine because it has the various heat settings so I can change it for the project. However, I did do this with an inexpensive laminator and I did good results with that also. You'll want to try whatever you have, try different heat settings, and try different cardstocks to see what works for you. This is applying heat and pressure, which is helping to get that foil to stick to that glue stamped image. Now again, if I would have printed this with a laser printer with toner and put the foil on it in the same way, it would fuse with the paper and really stick and give a smooth image and it won't come off. This isn't as strong. This isn't going to give you a perfectly fused results because it's just glue holding the foil down. So I'm going to let that cool for a second, kind of wave it around, and then peel it off. And you can see you get a pretty good foil image on your cardstock. One thing to really keep in mind, though, is that if you scratch that with your fingernail, it would mess up the foil a little bit. But I found that it goes through the mail just fine, and most people don't scratch at the cards that they get. So I stamped another with the same glue pad. This time I'm putting some of the lilac foil on it, running it through. And you'll see that I get good results once again. There is one tiny little spot where I didn't stamp well, but that's okay right there at the bottom of the Y. I'll show you how to fix that later, but you can see that's absolutely beautiful. The glue pad is inexpensive. You can get an inexpensive laminating machine and get some fun results this way. Okay, so this is the pewter this time, and I'm going to run it through once again. This time I turned the heat setting up to 4 to see if I got a different result, but I find 3 or 4 seems to work okay with the cardstock that I'm using. Now you'll see there I got a little foil where I didn't want it. I can just scratch that away with a craft knife. I also have this sand eraser. It's called the mono eraser, and this is great. It's tiny, and you can kind of sand away little glitches that you make on your projects. My friend Mary Dawn told me about this, and I found that this has been a great tool. You can also use a paper sanding block. I'll link to this if you wanted to try it. Now remember, when you foil something with adhesive, it doesn't really bond completely the paper. It's just stuck to it. I wanted to show you what it looks like when you do scratch it. See how you can kind of mess it up a little bit? It's not too much, but it is something to keep in mind. If you used a laser printer, this wouldn't happen as much. But that's just something that I think you sacrifice using the glue pad, but this is a great way to get a stamped image with foiling. This brings us to another option, and that is to use a liquid glue and kind of create your own ink pad with it. I've done this in a video before, and this is probably the technique that I prefer for using glue for foiling. I use FlitterGlu, which is a super sticky liquid adhesive. That's what this bottle is here. A little goes a long way with this. And I use the foam, a clean foam, with an ink blending tool to kind of create my own ink pad. So I'm just going to dab that foam into some of that FlitterGlu, and now I can dab this onto my stamp so that it's like I created my own glue ink pad. Okay, so I'm going to dab this right onto my stamp, get some even coverage here. Again, I'm going to use my T-ruler and the lines on my acrylic block to make sure that I stamp this straight onto the white cardstock. So this is going to be super sticky. So if I let that dry, it would end up a sticky image. I'm going to go ahead and put a piece of that champagne foil pretty side up down onto it, put it in my carrier sleeve, run it through the laminator like I did before, and I don't know, I kind of rub my finger against it just to make sure it's sticking and wave it to cool it down, and there we have beautiful results also. I think I get better results. I did a bunch of these. I made a bunch of cards, and I think I had better luck each time using the liquid glue, option number 2. There's one more glue option that I would recommend, and that is using an inexpensive glue pen. You could stamp an image with a light ink and trace it with the glue pen, and then put the foil on it and run it through the laminator as I showed you. However, I like to use a glue pen just to fix little areas where I want to add some foil. So like on this prayers, the R didn't completely stick, so I'm just drawing in the bottom part of the R with the glue pen, and I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to let that sit for a while because as it sits, it gets stickier. Once it's really sticky, I'm just going to press foil on it and pull away, and it leaves foil behind. So this is good for just fixing up little areas that might not have foiled well. Again, this isn't going to be super smooth and super perfect, but it really gives great results. As you'll see in the card images, I'm really happy with them. I do want to say that there is one way to get a perfectly foiled stamped image, and that would be to stamp your image with black ink, scan it, and print it on a laser printer, and then do your foiling. I haven't done this technique in a video because I don't feel comfortable photocopying any stamped images due to policies of companies, but if it's for personal use and you check with the company, you might want to try that. However, I think these techniques work just fine for me for the card making that I do. Okay, now we have a bunch of foil pieces ready to go. It's time to do our stamping and coloring. I have this adorable simple floral wreath image from Mint Owl Studio. I love this image. I'm stamping it with a My Favorite Things light gray ink that is Copic friendly. And now I'm just going to trace over it with various colors of Copic, just doing some basic coloring. So I'm kind of going over those gray lines. That's why I stamped with a light ink. I'm just going to color right over them. I didn't want to stamp with a dark ink because I thought that might be too distracting from the foil words in the center. This is a great way to create like a soft image behind that foil focal point. You could use any markers or colored pencils to do this coloring. I just picked Copics because it's fastest for me. I also wanted to put a touch of foil at the center of each of these flowers. So I grabbed my glue pen and I'm putting a tiny little dot at the center of each flower. I'm going to set that aside to let it dry so it gets good and sticky. Then again, I'm going to bring a piece of foil to it and just press the foil down, and it leaves behind just a tiny dot of that foil. Great way to kind of finish off that stamped image and tie it together with the foiled word in the center. Now I did a bunch of these cards, as I mentioned. I did some with the purple foil, and I really like the results of that. These cards are going to be going to the Lasting Hearts card drive, which is collecting cards for parents who recently lost their children, and I will link to that information if you'd like to participate. But I thought these simple cards would be perfect for that cause. Okay, so now that we have our foiled sentiment and our stamping done, it's time to put the card together. I wanted a little dimension on that background piece, so I'm using an embossing folder from We Are Memory Keepers. These are the next level embossing folders, which give incredible dimension. It's not just raised and lowered areas, but it's everything in between, so you get smooth, incredible dimension. I've cut some cardstock to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, putting that in there with all the tabs open on my Sizzix Big Shot machine here. You can use these embossing folders with other die cut machines also, and check out that dimension that you get. Now I did this from a bunch of pieces of colored cardstock. I'm going to put some adhesive on these and put them right onto a 5 1/2 by 4 1/4 white note card, so I'm covering up the entire background. Now I did trim my stamped panel down to about 3 inches by 4 1/4, and I am gluing a piece of craft foam between it and the note card just to give it some even raised dimension. Now you want to be sure to use a good amount of adhesive there because there is that uneven dimension on the purple cardstock, so you want to make sure that it stays put. Now I made a bunch of cards because I was experimenting with different types of glues and how to go ahead and laminate them to get that foiling technique. And here are all the cards that I made. These were fun because I could just grab a few Copic markers and go color them at my son's baseball practice. And now I have a bunch of cards to send in for the Lasting Hearts card drive. So I encourage you to try some of these foiling methods. What works for one person may not work as well for another. So try different things. Try the adhesives you have on hand. Try the supplies that you have and find what works best for you. If you are interested in the products that I used today, I have them linked below in my YouTube description. I also encourage you to click up there on the top left, and that will take you to my blog where I have much more information. In the middle is a link to my foiling playlist where you can see all kinds of foiling videos and find which method is best for you. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll come back soon.